Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to this info session to hear about a wonderful organization down on the Gulf of Mexico over in Mexico, Veracruz. We have two presenters today. Our main presenter is going to be Steve Dugill, and then his colleague who's down in Mexico, Kash, will be also chiming in. And over the course of this presentation, they'll be talking about the movement of birds of prey that moves annually through this part of Mexico and sort of the mechanisms as to why that's happening. We'll be talking about the history of this hawk watch and some of the opportunities that you have to get down there next fall. And this is a special thing that a couple people within Red Rock Audubon have helped to create, working with Steve and communicating with him over the last few weeks or maybe months to get this together. So I'm excited about this. I'm sure that other people on here are excited. Doug Chang is tuning in from the East Coast, and he was also kind of one of the big drivers in getting this together. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we will find time to go over them. Perhaps over the course of the presentation, our presenters will answer your questions. But if you have any, just put them in there. That way you don't lose your thought, and we'll get to them. So I will be controlling the slides, and Steve will be giving me a cue to do that. So Steve, you'll want to make sure that you're visible. And I see you there next to Kash. So Kash, that applies to you too. When it's time for us to go and switch slides, just give me a little movement, or just say next slide, please, or something like that. We'll figure it out as we go along. Steve, you have the floor.
Okay, well, how's it going, everyone? I'm really excited to be here. As Alex said, my name's Steve Dugill, and I'm coming in live from Las Vegas, Nevada. This is my home now. I'm a biologist working locally here. I guess if I had to describe myself, and I don't really like talking about myself, but if I had to describe myself, I would say that I'm crazy about birds and bird conservation. And I have been since I've been like a little kid growing up in the UK. I guess my tie into Pro Natura, which is the nonprofit that we're going to be talking about today, really started in 2019 when Kash hired me as a raptor counter at the famous Rio de Rapazes, or the River of Raptors project. So we're going to be kind of talking about that today. And this year, I was super lucky to bring two groups over there. So to share this experience with everyone, and not only like sharing the birds and the experience and my friends there with my friends over in the US, but it also acted as a fundraiser for Pro Natura. So anyway, I'm excited to kind of talk about the project and the birds of Mexico.
Thank you. Kash, would you like to give a quick introduction?
Sure. Yeah, thank you for the invitation, and hi everyone. I'm Kashmir Wolf. I'm the coordinator of the River Raptors, but before that, like, I got involved with Pro Natura in 2008, like over more than 10 years ago. And it was like doing my social service in the counting station. So I was an assistant back in the time, and then I just got involved with the project. I just started birding when I was around 11, 12 as a little kid. So it was really nice to be in Veracruz in the school where some people were talking about the project, the River of Raptors, and then I was able to finally get a place in this beautiful project that is basically monitoring the pulse of the annual migration, the annual movement of at least the 95% for 40 species. And it's something that really fills you with goosebumps when you are in the counting stations, like monitoring and getting around where so many like-minded people that is also focused on the birds, like taking care of birds, or they like to photograph birds. So it's really nice. It's a really nice gathering. It's like migrating birds to the Chichicaxtla and the Carde locations where we have the counting stations, basically. So I've been in the project for a long time, and I'm probably gonna be there for as long as I'm needed there. But yeah, thank you, and let's keep the talk.
Thank you, Cash. Okay, Steve, off you go.
Okay, well, I really appreciate, first of all, Alex for organizing all of this, and then the Red Rock Audubon Society for really giving me the opportunity to chit chat with everyone this evening. I literally just got back from Mexico, spending 6 weeks in Mexico just a couple of days ago. So this is really fortuitous because I've just got all the birds and the images and thoughts and experiences still totally firmly lodged in my mind. So this is just the perfect time for this presentation. So Alex, should I just like tap my nose, or should I just say change, or let's change slide now?
Sure. Now it doesn't want to
change.
Doesn't want to do the change thing.
Oh.
All right, I'm clicking on it.
Can you like arrow down or something? Or...
There we go.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so we're looking at a map there. So I want to tell you this evening about this really amazing part of Mexico. And this is where we're going to spend our time. We're in the state of Veracruz, and it's the place of just this earth-shattering migration spectacle that can be witnessed there every year. And it's essentially every fall. And we're in that little bit of Mexico where it narrows into this neck. And we're south of the US border by, I would say, about 3 days as the broad-winged hawk flies. There's a whole series of these northwest to southeast running valleys within these kind of complex series of mountains. And these mountains and valleys, they funnel the birds to the Caribbean coast. And that allows basically the birds from the eastern and the western US to mix at this one spot. It's really unique. And then just north, so kind of where this spot on the map is, just north of the town of Cardel, the Sierras meet the ocean there. And the flat coastal plain that opens up, that is where we're going to be positioned tonight. That is what we're talking about. It's that point. Next slide. And it's here at that point, that's where the thermals, these hot air currents, that's where they build. And interspersed between the thermals is this narrow conveyor belt of fast moving air currents. And it's these conditions that are just absolutely perfect for raptors to move with very little effort. They don't have to put out much energy, and so they can just cover vast distances. And looking at this photo, we're looking at Swainson's hawks here. You get thousands of birds, and all the birds are concentrated in this coastal plain that stretch perhaps about 30 kilometers inland. It's really until you start getting into the foothills of the next lot of mountains, kind of below Jalapa, which is the big city there. Next slide. And in fact, it's not just thousands of birds, but we're talking tens of thousands. You know, in fact, you know, it's not even tens of thousands. We're talking hundreds of thousands of birds. It's quite unbelievable. And you know, in so many respects, what I could do, and I think what a lot of people would do, is they would just show you more and more pictures like this. And, you know, really, they're just little dots in the photograph. And sure, it's impressive, but it's really hard to get that emotional connection to it. And, you know, maybe you look at a YouTube video and there's birds swirling around, but, you know, in so many respects, it's absolutely impossible to describe the sights you see, as they provoke so many emotions, and all the emotions are different with different people. And I brought 2 groups this year, and people were in tears. You know, people were speechless. Each person was, you know, looking a different way, you know, at these vast numbers of birds, and they're all sharing different components of the spectacle with one another. So I guess just for a moment, let's just try something, and let's just use our imaginations here. It's mid-October, it's hot and a little bit humid. The cumulus clouds have just started building, and we're 5 stories up. That's 110 steps. I've counted every one of them because I worked there for numerous days. So we're 5 stories up on the roof of a hotel in the town of Cardell. So this is close to the coast in Veracruz. It's a little run down, it's a little bit seedy, there's like paint crumbling and, you know, the paint's fading. There's street and market noises kind of coming up from below, and you can kind of smell the tacos coming up as well. And we're looking out to the north past the buildings and the sugarcane fields and the soccer pitches to the distant mountains that are kind of a little bit hazy in the broma, or the, you know, the kind of the dust. So close your eyes and just imagine a line of raptors, a river, and at this time of year it would be the turkey vultures and Swainsons, and they're 15 birds wide, maybe 20 or 30 or 40 birds wide by maybe 5 or 10 tall, and they're snaking their way uninterrupted from one horizon to the other. And I literally mean, if you look ahead of you in the daytime and you look into the disappearing distance, you've got birds starting there, they're coming over your head, and then if you turn around 180 degrees, they are disappearing into the distance. And along this river, along this route, are series of vortexes, or as we say in the States, kettles, of hundreds upon hundreds of birds. And these birds are, oh, I apologize. These birds are coming along the river, and they're entering these vortexes at the bottom. They're spiraling up, and then one bird will leave from close to the top, and then all the others follow, and then the river will keep going. There are 10 different kettles positioned along this line. And then there's 5 different lines, all with vortexes. And sometimes these lines are crossing and the vortexes just become huge. It all just blows up. Next slide. Okay, so this seems like, with all these birds, this seems like a pretty good place to count raptors. And so back in the early 90s, after some prior surveys at different sites between the coast and Jalapa, which is, you know, in the foothills, the first systematic counts basically were started at Chichicaxtla, this little pueblo, this little village in Cardell. First, they were just on the edge of the soccer pitch while the soccer games were going on. And then this, on the left here, this dodgy looking scaffold platform that you had to like cling onto. And then with funding, an observatory was built, basically focusing the entire work that ProNatura does. So this site we're looking at is Chichicaxtla. Okay, next slide. So this is the other count spot. It's about 10 kilometers to the east towards the ocean. And this is the top of the hotel, so the 5 stories up, and it's the Bienvenidos, the Welcome Hotel. And that tower in front of you, you can see some counters and some of my group in the background there. But that tower in front is kind of cool, and hopefully Cash, when he kind of chit chats a little bit later, will talk about it, but it holds one of the Motus receivers, and that was just established this fall. And they've been having some cool hits already, just birds that were banded in North America, in the US and Canada coming past here, and they get recorded. Let's hit the next slide. So what is counted, and why does everyone go to, so much effort? Because there's a lot of time and effort put into all of this. Well, Cash was, was basically telling us that, pretty much the entire North American population of Mississippi kites and Swainson's hawks and broadwings, and pretty much, a huge number of turkey vultures, a massive number of turkey vultures, TVs, they pass through this tiny little narrow corridor. And it gives us a really unique opportunity to count their entire populations on an annual basis. It's pretty much the only place in the world where you can do this. And we're talking astronomical numbers here, just huge, huge, huge numbers. More than 4.5 million raptors in a full season. Maybe I'll just say that again, 4.5 million. Like when you're talking big numbers, it's really hard to wrap your head around it, but it's crazy. And it all starts with the kites, the Mississippi kites, kind of in mid to late August. And each of these species, so that's this orange little bit of the bar chart. And so each of the species, have their own distinct characters. So these guys, the Mississippi kites, they're small and they're fast. And you see a vortex in the distance, like way off in the distance when you're a counter, and then it just disappears, and you think, oh, where's it gone? And then suddenly, right above your head is 1,000 birds, and they're all just swirling around in a big mass. And then before you know it, they're gone again, and they're just in a line heading south. So in September this year, I took 2 groups out, and the first group, we were there for, basically aimed for the Mississippi kite migration. And we were super lucky to witness an amazing day where we had 25,000 Mississippi kites fly by us in 2 hours. So again, it's just very hard to even visualize that, but it's quite the most amazing sight. The next species to invade, it really happens at the end of September, and that's the broadwings. And you just get these huge swirling vortexes that can be tens of thousands of birds deep, with lines just crisscrossing back and forth across the skies. It's a dramatic time. And this is the time when the platform is full of a lot of tourists coming up there. And then the Swainson's hawks hit. And this is like mid-October. And this is almost my favorite time. Almost all of the Swainson's hawks pass in a 2-week window. So there's a lot of birds, and they all just push through in this really concentrated time period. And they hold their wings, very stiff and flat. They're not flapping, and they just ride this conveyor belt in just rows upon rows upon rows. And then you have the TVs joining them, and there'll be a few broadwings. So you have the big TVs and the stately smaller Swainsons, and then the relatively small broadwings, just cruising overhead at 25 to 30 kilometers an hour. Just no flapping at all. And then finally, by the end of October, the TVs, the turkey vultures here in blue, they start to take over. And, they're passing through November and even into December. And they really exemplify the whole Rio de Raptors, the River of Raptors. And their river just flows from horizon to horizon. It's a little bit more narrow, but again, it just is unbroken from north to south. Next slide. So how do people count these birds? I mean, we're talking tens, hundreds of thousands of birds going through in a day. And it really isn't easy. I can vouch for that. Although the Pro Natura staff really seem to make it appear so. as we've alluded to, there's 2 count locations, and they're about 10 kilometers apart or so. The one inland is Chichicaxtla, and the other Cardell on top of that hotel, closer to the coast. There's 2 counters at each site with an assistant. It runs 7 days a week from early in the morning, 8 a.m. to sunset, pretty much from mid-August all the way to the end of November. Next slide. And the 2 counters, they got to be on the ball. They split the sky and, you know, basically in half, and they decide how to divide up the lines. And I'm not talking individual birds here, it's the lines of birds that they divide up, and they count. And they stay in contact with the other count station with radios so that the individual lines are not double counted. And then the assistants at each site, they enter the data live into an online database. And this database is used in other count sites in North America, and it's called Dunkadoo. And that feeds into the hawkcount.org website. And if you've never been to that website, it's a really fun one throughout the fall just to go to, and you can see all of the different hawk counting sites throughout North and South America, Central America as well, and on a daily basis. And so you can kind of predict what's coming down the line. Next slide. And when you're counting, the big secret is clickers. Clickers are key. If you've ever seen a YouTube video of the vortexes or kettles, in the background, you will always hear the furious clicking of the counters. And I was a counter in the 2019 season, and it really takes some getting used to. You know, you have, like here, you've got 3 clickers in one hand, and often a 4th in the hand that you're holding the binoculars with. And each clicker you're using to tally a different species as it's flying over. And as each species is passing overhead in different numbers, so each click will represent different numbers for each species. So for instance, you know, at one point in time, maybe 1 click equals 100 broad-winged hawks. In the other clicker, 1 click might be 10 Swainsons, and the 3rd clicker might be 1 click would equal 2 turkey vultures. But it's so dynamic, and so suddenly the Swainson's hawk numbers might just blow up, and then you just have to adapt on the fly. And then at the same time as counting the hawks going over, the main hawks, the ones going over in big numbers, you're also shouting out the other species as they pass. You know, you might be saying like Sharpie, Sharpie, Coop, Kestrel, Osprey, Sharpie, Hookbill, Zonetail, Gray, Greyhawk. And at the same time, you're still kind of clicking away. So it's something where you almost get into a Zen type atmosphere, and you're just totally focused for those 10, 12 hours of the day. Next slide. And it's super important to remember that although it's called Rio de Rapazes, the River of Raptors, we got to remember it's one of the greatest migration funnels in the world. So it's not just raptors we're talking about here. It's huge lines of pelicans, but we've got some white pelicans here. There's soaring flocks of woodstocks. There are these tight balls of anhingas just sparring up on the thermals. And they're all just like smashing into the raptor thermals and mixing together. They're all spiraling up and curling around. And all of these are counted at the same time as the raptors. And you can see thousands of these, you know, non-raptor species in a good day as well. But it's not just the water birds and the raptors. You know, there's clouds of dragonflies early on in the season, and you know, and that's a perfect food for the Mississippi kites. There's so many butterflies, you know, at low elevations, and they're following along kind of close to the sand dunes near the ocean. And again, that's perfect food for the kingbirds and the scissor-tail flycatchers. Next slide. And there can be thousands of scissor-tail flycatchers, tens of thousands of swallows, and white-winged doves. I mean, I've seen 120,000 white-winged doves in a day, and that probably wasn't the whole number because we were still frantically trying to count the raptors at the same time. You get tight flocks of dickcissels in just group after group, these tight balls just following the ocean. There's orioles and, you know, eastern kingbirds and swifts and warblers, and they're all just heading south. They're just piling over there. They're all just funneled into this like tiny little patch of the, you know, going above the sugarcane fields and the sand dunes and stuff. Next slide. So I've mentioned Pro Natura a couple of times. And so they're basically the nonprofit that runs the counts, but they do like so much more than just running the count. So I've been so lucky and privileged to work with Kashmir Wolf, who runs the program in Veracruz. And, you know, we're super lucky to have him here this evening. So I'm going to pass it over to him just so that he can kind of chit chat a little bit about his work and the role of Pro Natura in the conservation of, you know, raptors in, you know, in that part of Mexico.
Thanks, Steve. Can I share my screen?
I'm going to stop sharing here and I'm going to make you a co-host. Just accept that and you should be able to do it. And just a quick time check, guys, it's almost 7, so we'll try to wrap up around 7:30 if we can. But take it away, Cash.
Yep. So yeah, as Steve was telling and taking us to this really nice trip down here, as he said, like it's not just about getting the count and focus on the bird migration. So during this time, during the fall, we are focused also on the like we do a lot of work with the community. So we have, well, this is sorry, I forgot. So all the data is always available. Like all the data, the counters are basically collecting since the morning until they're done, and all the birds that are seen in the day, and all that goes into eBird. So if you are familiar with eBird, and you can take a look on the hotspots that are around this area we are talking about, and it's amazing like how many birds we can spot, and pretty much every year we add a new species to the list. But something else that we do is we also have a research station that is it is a raptor banding station. I don't know how many people have been visiting or know about banding raptors, but this is something we have been doing since 1998. And right now we are like trying to get at least one question answer. And for this year, we are doing what this is. The person that is taking the sample is Maggie. She is doing her master degree research, and she is focused on bacteria, like internal bacteria and also the external bacteria that are related to migratory birds, in this case, the raptors. So hopefully she's gonna have a wide diversity of trapped raptors, because the two main that like makes like the 90% of her captures are sharp-shinned hawks and Cooper's hawks. So hopefully in this new site that she is now, that we have an agreement with the landowner that he allow us to be in his land, which is now a park, like eco park. We are helping him to move from raising cows and having them like open range and grazing pretty much everywhere to switch to a more eco-friendly activity in a beautiful place that he has. So right now, like, this is a test, like a test effort in this park, and right now we're getting diversity, a good diversity of not only accipiters. So the one that is now in the picture is a short-tailed hawk, one of the regular raptors that we can see pretty much every day here in Veracruz. And another thing, as Steve mentioned, we are trying to get answers for some questions, like where the greyhawks that we're counting come from and where they go. So finally, after several years, we were able to be part of the Motus network, which is a range of antennas that are listening for target birds, like this juvenile greyhawk that I'm showing you in the picture, that is carrying this super tiny like radio device that is sending a signal with his unique number. So lucky to us, is in a success already. We have some detections from kestrels, soras, Swainson's thrushes, and this greyhawk. Also, we banded. It's like 30 kilometers north, and the station in Cardell detected the tag. So was really nice. And this is one of the maps that this is a kestrel, American kestrel, and was in tag or mark in Wisconsin, and then he started making this movement until finally make his way down to Veracruz. And then with the other Pro Natura, we have Pro Natura is an organization that works in the whole country. We have like chapters. It's like similar to Audubon. So the Veracruz chapter was working with the Pro Natura Sur, and we were building that towers. We set up those towers just this spring, and so far, at least we know that we put all the cables in the place they're supposed to be. So we're getting inside now. So that's really excited. And this is like the coverage that we have. So basically, the River of Raptors is south of the mountain range that is creating this bottleneck. So the idea is to have a range of antennas that overlap to each other so we can create a fence. And we have to continue towards that 180 road that goes to the like northwest to Jalapa, which is the capital of Veracruz in the map, like close to Wetzel's map and satellite. So we are trying to connect all that area, which is the mountains, basically the tallest mountains of central Veracruz, to the shoreline where we have the counting stations. And this is something really important, that this information is available. Like if you go to the Motus website, you will meet a map, and you will find so many yellow dots that are the antennas located, and probably there is one that very close to where you live, and you can take a look where those birds are going. And it's fantastic because it's open for everybody. And another important component is environmental education. And we work with kids because we know kids are the future, and we know that if we make them aware when they get older, they may have more tools, or at least something that is going to tell them that they have to protect some of the environment that they are live in. So every Wednesday, we have kids coming from the town, and we go to other places as well to aware about, to spread the awareness about the migratory birds, because I mean they have to know that it's a huge effort what they do to fly across thousands of miles every year and trying to come back and fighting against all the stones that we place them in their way. And if we can do something, like even plant a tree where a ruby-throated hummingbird can fit on as a station, can make a difference. And that's the message we are trying to share with all people that we can. Is like try to make a difference, because birds will appreciate it, and that's something really important. And is very nice. Like one of the, like this year, one of the person that is in charge of the environmental activities, when you go to the store in the town and she is there, and there is a kid from the workshops, like, oh, hi Tamara, how are you? Like they got excited, like, are we gonna meet on Wednesdays? So that's really cool that they're like expecting to be in the workshops and learning and sharing time with us. And beyond that, land protection is something that ProNatura is been promoting for many years so far. And it's incredible how if you tell people the importance of their land, because sometimes for them it's like, oh, I have just this weeds and I don't grow anything on my land. So many people think that land is useless or worthless, and they think that if they cut all the trees, they probably can begin to do something with the land. So what we're trying now to tell them is, you can keep a big portion of the forest area if you are not like planning on do something really big, so you can save habitat for so many birds. And sometimes we walk with them and we show them like all the wildlife that they have in their land. It's amazing when we give them the binoculars and they see a Canada warbler or a hooded warbler, and they say like, wow, I didn't knew this was here. And it's like, yeah, they're coming here because thanks to you, they can come here, stay the winter, and then return to mate and to have more babies. And those babies probably are gonna come here because their parents will teach them something like that. And that's when they start like, okay, yeah, I probably should leave the trees to grow as bigger as they can. And land protection is being really important. We have at least more than 60,000 acres protected through ProNatura's work. So what we do, we facilitate all the process for making the reserve, because they receive a certificate from the government. So it's the environmental agency, that the federal environment agency, the one that provide the certificates, and we help them with all the process, because it's a lot of time. It requires a lot of economical support, because they have to travel to the capital, or they have to send or come or arrange a lot of things in order to have their papers in order. So what ProNatura does is help them to have all the information in and then file them to the environmental agency. So that's one of our success, and having so many places just around the corridor is really, really important. And as Steve was telling, another of the main source of the income for this project is through these sponsoring tours. So people come visit, and in the same time you are supporting the project, so we can continue making all the work that we've been doing over 30 years basically. So what people is going to come, they will see, they will experience by themselves the work that we do, the places where we take them are some places that Pro Natura have impact, who have protected, or places where we have a really nice relationship with landowners, like this coffee plantation that you will see in the picture looks like a forest. And yeah, that's the idea, that coffee plantations shouldn't be a monoculture. They have to keep as really nice habitat for birds, and also provides a good quality coffee, for example. And the birds that many people can enjoy and share, as well as the cultural sites. Like Veracruz has amazing history, like it's over 500 years at least that the Spaniards arrived. So the history from Veracruz comes from thousands of years in advance. And we have places like this in Puebla, which is only like 15 minutes away from the canteen stations. And this is the place where Hernan Cortés arrived and make this agreement with the Totonacs in order to beat the Aztecs in the 1900s. So it's really interesting place. These ancient overlooks as well. Like the connection with these ancient cultures with birds is amazing. If you go to the Museum of Jalapa, most of the pottery from this area, they will have birds, and this is really nice. And there is also like this area that I'm showing is a cemetery that was on top of a mountain. And that place is just in the middle, like it gets around the raptors or during the raptor migration. And I always tell people, like, just imagine being in a ceremony where somebody is going to be buried, and this huge massive event of soaring raptors just fly by. Like, what will be the meaning for them? Is like, it's incredible. So I like, if you have questions, I think Steve and I will be happy to answer, but hopefully we'll see you in Veracruz.
Excellent.
Thank you. That was amazing. How lucky we are to get some of this history straight from somebody who's over there right now and so instrumental as a part of that. I want to be sensitive to our ending time around 7:30. So Steve, I know you have a lot of slides left, but if you don't mind just sort of getting through sort of like the more salient points, like maybe next steps or.
Yeah. Well, let me just jump in real quickly then. And I guess what I want to do, basically this year I brought two groups over to Veracruz, and we've been talking about supporting Pro Natura, this kind of stuff. I mean, it's one of the main funding sources for the Rio de Rapazes. So this next year, 2023, I'm planning on several trips, and one with the Red Rock Audubon Society is slated for mid-October. And like we know, that's one of the best times. I mean, it's all the best time, but this is the time for the Swainson's Hawks really to kick in a big way. Let me just real briefly what the tour would involve. You go through a whole range of different habitats. I don't really have time right now, but Cash kind of showed some pictures there. But there's lowland rainforest, there's coastal mangroves, there's lowland tropical rainforest, lowland tropical dry forest. There's the Hawk Watch locations. We've got the mid-elevation forest, we've got the high pine forest, we've got the cloud forest, and we've even got deserts up in the transvolcanic plain. I guess more than like creating a big bird list, and we're definitely going to see lots of birds, one of the things that's really important for me is how it ties in with the local conservation and the community. And you know, one of the things that we're going to do is we'll share a meal with the local counters in the little pueblo of Chichicaxtla, and that gives you a chance really to get to know the counters and the Pro Natura staff. Like I said, you know, there's this coffee plantation, this shade-grown coffee plantation that's super fun to visit, and you learn from Don Jorge, who's and it's been in his family for 4 generations. You know, we go around a local park in Jalapa with the manager, and we get to see the bearded wood partridge, or the Chivis coil. And, you know, he talks about the local history and the politics and the conservation. Cash showed that archaeological site, amazing place to see the Rio de Raptors. We saw that picture of the scarlet macaws, and we get a chance to see one of the reintroduction sites in the rainforest of Los Tuxtlas. And we had the first wild-born birds hatched out in 2019. We get a chance to hook up with local bird surveyors in Ruiz Cortines, these mist forests. And the guy there is an amazing, he whistles in raptors, and one of the birds he whistled in for us was a beautiful ornate hawk eagle. So we had fantastic views in one of the trips, and then flyover views with another. And then all the time, we're basically surrounded by the Pro Natura family. You know, we're just getting to know what they do, and we're meeting the folks. Up on the Hawk Watch platform, you're going to meet lots of families and kids, all locals, and then there's going to be people from further afield as well. And then we're going to get involved with the local education programs, and some of the counters actually, that's how they got involved with the Rio de Raptors. So I guess just to summarize, we're just going through some of the birds, and all these pictures were taken by members of the last 2 tours. So, you know, for me, it's just a huge amount of fun. There's great food, great people, just amazing experiences. You're in a really non-touristy part of rural Mexico. It's safe. We saw lots and lots and lots of bird species, 330 in the first tour in September and 370 bird species in the second tour. Tour participants added thousands of photos into iNaturalist of butterflies and moths and bee mimics and whip scorpions and just all sorts of things. So yeah, there's an Apalado falcon. That's the bird that you'll definitely get to see, especially in the sand dunes. Maybe that's an introduced parrot there, the monk parakeet. And I think maybe a couple slides more. Okay, this one. So this is our final stop. You know, this is the Hotel Macambo in Puerto, the Veracruz city. And that's where we end up. It's right on the beach. It's a great birding spot, perfect place for great seafood. And it's where we have our despedida. That's our farewell goodbye. And if you get a chance to come on this trip, you know, the last 2 tours, we had people in tears, yeah, during the farewell. It's a very moving experience. So I really appreciate the time, and hopefully I haven't taken you too long, and I'm happy to, with Cash, answer any questions and comments and that kind of stuff.
Awesome. That was so great. And I'm glad that we landed right there. Kind of our timing was perfect. We're synced up, Steve, going through the slides there. I think it complemented what Cash had to say with some of the background. Such a dynamic place. And, you know, I do want to echo as people sort of like formulate the questions in their minds and put them in the chat. I'm happy to read them. But just like seeing birds from a fixed standpoint, you know, not going out and actively seeking out the birds, but standing or sitting in one place and watching birds move from one horizon over you and then past you with determination, you know, moving southbound, that changed the way that I appreciated migration for, you know, the rest of my life, having had a similar experience hawk watching, but far less volume than Veracruz. And I still think back to how important that was to me, and how much better I came back as a hawk and raptor identifier. To be around so many people who know what they're looking at and have literally thousands of birds to fly over you, you really get the opportunity to learn what a Swainson's hawk looks like. Here we get a couple that pass through every season, and maybe you see some on their summering grounds, and over a couple of years you might get a good chance to like identify a Swainson's hawk. But when you see thousands of them, you learn what a Swainson's hawk looks like, and that sticks with you the rest of your life. And you will see thousands of other birds of many different species, and like this is I would say, like, for some people a spiritual experience, but also that opportunity to learn with your friends and strangers what these birds look like and a lot about their stories. So this is super cool. This is great. And I see that you have some tour dates here, some possible tour dates, and ways to get in touch with Steve. So this is the last slide. So everyone take down your this email address here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and look through the chat. See if we have
I want to echo what you said about a spiritual experience. One of the sites, that archaeological site, back in the day, the people that were living there, 500 years ago plus, before the Spaniards came, the Rio de Rapazes passing over their sites was thought the raptors were thought to carry the spirits of the dead to the afterlife. And so when we're actually, we're seeing raptors not just up on the hawk watching platforms, we're seeing them coming over the dunes, we're seeing them coming over these archaeological sites. And so it really is quite a moving experience when you have that, and especially to tie into the old culture as well.
Well said.
Steve and Kashmir, this is Doug. I thank you for putting that perspective in for me. For me, I have always thought about the connection of these birds in a flyway, but what you have added is a new dimension of what people saw 1,000 years ago, right? Every year, these birds are giving us that's the privilege of being connected with the past and hopefully the future, right? We are going to hopefully do the things that will allow this to continue maybe 1,000 years from now. So thank you.
So I put in the chat, says, because I don't see any questions here, I put in the chat a link to a movie that I watched during the height of the pandemic. It's called Birders. And I don't know if this is a accurate depiction or if it's been Hollywood dramatized, Cash and Steve, but in Birders, they look at what's going on either side of the border with Texas and in Mexico, like in Tamaulipas, and then also down in Veracruz, to talk about what birds are going through and how people on both sides of the border are appreciating the birds moving in and out of Mexico and in and out of the United States. Because, as we're understanding here, especially when we see these MODIS maps, like, we share our birds. We don't have birds necessarily that are the United States' birds, right? They're moving through Mexico and sometimes down, in the Swainson's hawks cases, like to Argentina. And it's this movie I do recommend people watch. And I know that there's at least a portion of it that where the crew visits your site and watches this River of Raptors sort of flowing overhead. So I put that in there. Steve, how can people get in touch with you if they're interested in joining you in 2023? I saw the email there. I know you're going to India real soon to do a lot of birding for like a month or so, or 3 months or something like that. So I know that we have a year to organize this trip. But what are the next steps? What do you recommend people do to get in touch? Do you have anything set up with Doug in terms of, you know, how to coordinate this, or like what do you think?
Well, I think the next steps for me is really to kind of chit chat with Doug. I know Doug, you jump in, but he'd expressed an interest to be the main point of contact. Which, I mean, I really don't mind being the point of contact. You saw my email there, and I'm happy if people want to like fire me off questions, and you know, I'll get back. And even when I'm traveling, there's definitely going to be a few places where it's super remote and I can't get back to you, you know, in a few days. But generally, I get back to people pretty fast. But if Doug can kind of coordinate the people who would, you know, like to come, I can send a whole bunch of information, like a package that, you know, will give more information about the hotels and the van, and you know, just the conditions and kind of what to expect, and you know, the difficulty of the trails and how much sun and the weather, you know, just all these kinds of things, all of the nitty gritty. You know, that's you know, that's the important stuff. You know, we had a whole range of different kinds of people coming. You know, like people who, you know, had more mobility issues, and people who were very sprightly and just running around all over the place. You know, we had, you know, very recent birders, you know, just started the, you know, the pastime, and, you know, very, you know, in-depth birders as well. People who are into photography and people who weren't. So with two guides, we really can, you know, like accommodate a lot of different needs. And same with dietary considerations. Mexican food is amazing, and you know, there's a lot of seafood along the ocean there, and it's great. So
Yes.
I will get straight away with Doug, and we're kind of coordinate that.
Yeah, so just we were thinking, you know, I think Barbara Beck is on the call. This is one of the projects we want to do for Red Rock Audubon, and there's a committee, there's a field trip birding events committee, and this will be on that committee's planning horizon. So don't view me as the single person. I think we have this thing organized just right. Steve, you are the kind of this trip leader, but we have a committee in Red Rock Audubon, so you know, there will be more and more information coming out over the months. I think we have given you information tonight. There are probably other resources you should check into. You know, I would also say that I've had the privilege of being on many trips around the world, and things like this don't come along very often. And don't be surprised, these things get sold out pretty quickly. Something I have not talked with Barbara and the committee, we will open this thing up to the whole community. So I know there will be people. There are 2 other chapters in Nevada, and there are probably others. But I think tonight you heard the work that the Kashmir organization is doing. And I think there are lots of people who love birds and would love to support it. So
let me just echo what Doug just said. When the two trips I organized, they were basically with friends this year. I organized them essentially a year in advance. Like both trips filled up essentially within 2 days. And you know, there's some of the people are, you know, on, you know, listening this evening, and some of the folks are coming back next year. You know, they loved it so much. So yeah, definitely kind of think about it, but you know, just be conscious that I think this will be quite popular.
Okay, so it sounds like this is the early bird sort of, I don't know if the special, but we're getting a little bit of a head start here with Red Rock because of our connection with you, Steve, and Steve's connection with the organization and Cash. So we should wrap up real soon, but there are some questions that did float in, and I want to get to them. One of them is from, I don't know if this is Andrea V or Andrea W, but are there trips always 2 weeks long? Are there other trips that might be shorter earlier in the season?
Yeah, so depending on the level of interest, I'm doing 2 other trips, you know, next year. This one is for the Swainson's Hawk. There's one later on for, like I said, the Dia de los Muertos turkey vulture movement, and then one a little bit earlier on in the seasons for the Broadwings. Those other 2 I'm tying in with different nonprofits so that they can benefit and Pro Natura can benefit, kind of similar to what we're doing with Red Rock Audubon. If there is enough interest, I'm totally happy to do a similar trip as I did this year for the Mississippi kites that go, and that would go in early September. I've been doing the 14-day trips. I did one 10-day trip with an extension to the rainforest. And what happened was the rainforest is such a cool place that some of the people who missed out on the rainforest were saying, "Oh, I wish I'd gone. I wish I'd gone," and you know, things like this. So I'm open to a shorter trip for, you know, the Mississippi kite one, but I think you'll find that, you know, that there's just so many cool places that you just want to do the 14-day, or most people do.
Okay. Well, yeah, for those, so I'll combine the next question with another one sort of enveloped with my own. So what's the airport that people would fly into, and can people possibly show up, stay at the hotel and be part of the site if they don't have the ability to contribute 2 weeks? So if you wanted to do it sort of independently, is that possible? And if so, which airport would you fly into?
So Veracruz International Airport, VER is the 3-letter code, and you can rent cars from there. Just be super careful about the insurance. You know, don't get insurance ahead of time. Make sure it's through the car company. But yeah, you can drive if you're adventurous. There's lots of topes, like speed bumps to be aware of. There's local buses that will take you up to Chichicaxtla and Cardell. The hotel where the count is, the Bienvenido, you can stay there, and so you can actually stay on the, you know, in the rooms there and just take the elevator up to the 5th floor and just be with the counters. So it's definitely something you can do on your own. If you want to start traveling around to some of the other spots, you know, you have to be a little bit more adventurous than. But if you wanted to experience the River of Raptors, you can do it solo. It's definitely possible.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, I can add something that sometimes people is concerned about how secure is traveling in the area, and yeah, it's totally is secure. Like at least we are not in the passage of the drug dealers like are in the Pacific coast. So yeah, and I mean Steve, he just spent like 2 weeks like driving with a friend, and they were like just enjoying and with no trouble. So it's a nice place, and it's like super connected, basically, like even like renting a car or taking the shuttle buses is like super easy, and the distances are very close. So yeah, totally.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like you sort of fly into the airport, and then, you know, the birds are the birds are right there, right? And so if you can link up with maybe the staff or be a part of the, you can still be a part of the experience without, having the guided portion of it. And
Yeah. Let me just jump in. If someone is interested in that, I'm welcome to, offline, they just message me, and I'm happy to answer any questions and, give any help that I can.
great, cool, thank you. Yeah, and it was birdidiot@gmail.com.
That's my,
Is that the email?
Mhm.
Yeah, birds make us do crazy things. Okay, and the last question for the guided portion, this 2-week thing that you're offering, what is the cost estimate?
So it depends if you share a room. So for double occupancy, I think it was 36. It's either 35 or 3,600, and then it's like $300 more for single occupancy. And basically that includes from when you get picked up at the airport until you get dropped off. Everything apart from, like any kind of personal stuff. But, even a couple of beers a night is included, all the food, the AC van, all the community fees, the boat trip, just absolutely everything, is included in that, excluding a tip, excluding tips for the guide and the driver.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, we'll communicate, Steve, and work with Barbara and Doug and the rest of the events committee to sort of like bring that information in, prepare it, and send it out to people who are interested in this trip and get it out to them, and make sure that there's enough time to do that before you take off to go bird all over India, bird your face off over there. So. You have Steve's email. We will disseminate this video to whomever wants to see it again or feels like there's some information that they want to review. We'll send that out tomorrow. And thanks for tuning in, everyone. Cutting time out of your weekday evening to hear about the River of Raptors and spend time with Cash and Steve. Steve, Cash, thank you for your time.
Really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Cash.
So much. Thank you.
Take care, folks.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Good to meet you, Cash. Thanks for doing this. And
yeah, it was really nice.
are you all rushing off right now? I'm gonna stop recording here, but